BBC Radio Oxford.
Be part of it.
Conversing this morning, conversating about customer service. The good, the bad and the indifferent. We've been looking at some of the bits of a survey by the Institute of Customer Service, which I didn't even know existed before. 1 in 4 customers says that they would pay more for excellent customer service. Seeming interested in meeting a customer's needs is a big thing with us, apparently. Seeming helpful and seeming passionate about doing a good job. These are all important to us, apparently, when it comes to getting served. So this morning, I'm asking you about where you've had good customer service and where the customer service has been a bit ropey. Let's talk to retail expert Nancy Puccinelli. She's from the Said Business School. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, you also have been researching into what customers want.
I have, yes, I have. It's interesting as I'm hearing a little bit about. I've been listening to your show a little bit, and one of the things when we look at service, we've got what we might call order qualifiers and order winners. So, order qualifiers are the things you have to do to stay in business. So, the woman in the pub who has her hands on top of the glass, that's a no-go. Just you can't be doing that kind of thing if you're going to stay in business. But increasingly, we're realizing there's also order winners, the things you can do to really wow customers. Mm-hmm. And Phil Mayers, it seems like he's doing a nice job of that at his Throwing Buns Cafe. And actually, some of the research that I do kind of relates to, I think, part of the reason he's been so successful. My research looks at how service employees, how the woman behind the counter in a pub can read the nonverbal cues in customers to understand what they might be looking for.
Okay.
And so, for example, or in a bank, this is an even better example where you're going into your bank and the person behind the counter detects that maybe you're in a bit of a hurry. Or perhaps, you're speaking to one of your service representatives on the phone and sort of detects that, you've got to get things done quickly, and they can offer you slightly more efficient service as you move through the transaction.
So it's a case of tailoring the level of service to what you think the customer wants. Some customers might have a bit more time, might want a bit more of a chat. Some customers might just want to get in, do the transaction, and get out again.
Precisely. And so what my research is showing is that when we can afford to recruit service personnel, employees in a cafe or a bank who have the ability to and the motivation to attend to these subtle cues, and I'm talking about could be the tone of your voice, it could be the posture that you're holding as you're standing at the counter. That what we find is that there's people who are more skilled at reading these cues, and they're better at delivering customer service. They're better at recognizing what you need, and they can make you happier as a customer.
You mentioned, what was it, order qualifiers, and what was the other one?
And order winners.
Order winners. And were you able to identify the sorts of actions that fall into these sorts of categories?
Well, this is the distinction of order qualifiers and order winners is a distinction that's made throughout business, and so this idea that that in any given business, in any given industry, we've got those things that we need to do in order to simply be sort of staying in business. But increasingly, of course, as markets become more competitive, we've got to identify ways that we can be superior to our competitors. And so, as we think about service, some of the obvious ones that come to mind is as you were saying, the woman with her hands in the glass in the pub, and perhaps sort of hygiene issues, and making mistakes and spilling, and there's a whole host of things that we sort of expect as sort of a baseline in terms of service. Increasingly, though,
we put up with it when that baseline is is crossed. When that baseline is not even reached, we still put up with it. We don't say anything.
Right. It's interesting, yeah. And service recovery, that's another concept that we talk a lot about in research is, so when you do make a mistake, what do you do? And I think, the example of Chiltern Railways is a nice example where, giving folks more information is a brilliant idea. Now, why customers put up with bad service is a question. That can be a difficult one to answer. You're lucky if you've got customers that will do that will come back to you in spite of your horrible service. We know from the Institute survey that That's not going to happen with the majority of your customers. That you're going to lose quite a few customers, but clearly there's some other motivation that's driving them. Perhaps the local pub in town is got a sort of has cornered the market on local custom, simply because of the proximity to people's homes.
Yes.
But they're losing out, of course, on those folks who might come from further afield because their service is so poor.
Good to talk to you, Nancy. Thank you so much. Nancy Puccinelli, that's quite an interesting view, because, some customers do want to be chatted to. Some customers just want to be left alone. So how do you tell the difference? Talking about good customer service on The Big Conversation.